Good evening, dear friends, and welcome. Tonight is our final night of a long journey across almost 3,500 years, across the diverse library of Jewish scholarship, from the Bible, the written, the Tanakh, the 24 books of the Bible, the oral tradition, Midrash, the data that is extracted from the verses of the Bible, the Talmud, a process of preserving ancient oral traditions down to this very day, halacha, Jewish law and practice, as it developed, was preserved and conveyed throughout the ages, even to this very day, to philosophy and musar, self-help, self-improvement. All across the landscape, we've been talking about Jewish scholarship, but we've saved the best for last. And so I cannot be more grateful to those who are joining us here in the room, here on Zoom, and those who requested a recording will be joining us, bridging the past, present, and future. We dedicate once again our study for the memory of Aviva Moskowitz, who passed in the midst of this course. And we are now going to start a discussion about the Kabbalah. So sit back, relax, buckle your seatbelts. It's going to be a wild ride. And welcome. So lesson 6, our final installment, sees us talking about Kabbalah and Hassidism. I think this is going to whet your appetite for the next step of a lifelong journey of exploration. For those of you that have the map, you can take a peek at the greenish, bluish lines that say lesson 6. Just so you can peek at it. We're not going to use it right now, just so you can get your bearings. And we're going to talk about the Kabbalah. Here, for those that don't have a map, you can see it on the screen. This is a timeline and a map of our Jewish tradition. It's very small. I can't read these letters. I'm sure you can't either. But just for your information, it is this area, scanning thousands of years, approximately 2,300 years, although really it goes all the way back to the beginning of the Bible, our discussion of the Kabbalah. And so, thank you for joining us. And here again, if you just want to look on the screen, lesson 1 was the Bible, 2 was right over here, a discussion of the Midrash, and then Talmud, then Jewish law, then philosophy and improvement, and finally today, Jewish mysticism or Kabbalah, one of the most popular, least understood, puzzling facets of Jewish knowledge and scholarship. Kabbalah might be described as a Jewish wisdom. That's one of the oldest parts of the Jewish tradition, dating back to Mount Sinai itself. Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah. Well, you know what? Let's back up. Kabbalah has another name, and its name is Sod. Sod. Kabbalah and Sod are synonymous. You know what they mean? Kabbalah means that which was received, passed down in hushed whispers, secrets, conveyed from generation to generation. The other name used for this knowledge, part of Jewish tradition, is Sod, or secrets. The Kabbalah were teachings that were secrets, that were conveyed in hushed whispers from teacher to student, from generation to generation. They were doubly secret because we know that much of the oral tradition was only conveyed verbally and not in writing, but they were with broader accessibility available to any scholar who desired to take on the exploration of Jewish knowledge. Not so the Kabbalah, who very few people were worthy of being part of this tradition. Now, whenever you hear secrecy, what do you think? What do you wonder? Why the secrecy? Why did it need to be taught only select sages with obscure coded language. Why? The answer is because information is powerful. Certain types of information can both be very powerful, but also easily misconstrued, not understood, and take people to dangerous places. Ideas are important, but they need to be preserved accurately and deployed in a safe way. So to understand what exactly is so dangerous about the Kabbalah, about Jewish mysticism, please open your textbook, page 236. Text 2, page 236, 237. And we're going to read an excerpt from the Talmud talking about some very famous, high-profile individuals who engaged in the exploration of the Kabbalah, of the Sod, and not everyone emerged unscathed. Here is a cryptic tale from the Talmud about the Kabbalah. Text 2. 4 sages entered the orchard. Do you know what orchard means? In Hebrew, orchard is called pardes. And this is a reference to the deep mystical secrets. Ben Azai was the first, Ben Zoma the second, Acher the third, and Rabbi Akiva. Of those 4 who engaged deeply in Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah, they engaged deeply in the esoteric secrets of the Torah. 3 harmed, 1 survived. Ben Azai looked, he engaged and died. It consumed him to the point where he died young. Ben Zoma got involved in these secrets and went mad. He could not maintain his sanity in the face of these intense, wild teachings. Acher became a heretic. He was so disturbed by the deep and hard to understand ideas that he left his Jewish tradition. The famous Rabbi Akiva entered in wholeness, peace, and emerged in wholeness and peace. So what are we saying here? Well, we're describing mystical secret teachings, the secrets of creation, of existence itself, of God Almighty, and the method and manner in which he creates the universe. Sometimes some ideas are so overwhelming, so challenging, that they challenge our sanity itself. And that seems to be what we are describing here. These teachings have great risks. They're not bad teachings, they're true teachings. They are the truth. But it could be an overwhelming experience, even for a person who's very knowledgeable and very strong. What kind of ideas again? Creation of the world, the nature of God's relationship with existence, the existence of evil and how you can contend with evil, the spiritual profundity of doing a mitzvah, the nature of the soul, the human soul, and mission in this world. Ideas that are so important, but could be very intense, very overwhelming, very powerful. These powerful ideas are found in the secret parts of the Torah. The Kabbalah deals with the most fundamental truths of our existence. But when they are misunderstood, they can be distorted and destructive. And I will tell you something. There's an industry of folks trying to monetize and commercialize Kabbalah. And in my opinion, that might be troublesome. Because it's so holy, so important, so essential, but needs to be taught in a correct, accurate, authentic manner. The teachings of the Kabbalah were such mysteries, secrets, and challenges that for a very long period of time, the secrets of the Kabbalah were secrets. And only a teacher, a master of the Jewish mysticism, would gauge his students' readiness and then decide to impart those teachings to him. You may have heard of a famous idea that one ought not study the Kabbalah until they reach the age of 40. What's the age of 40? According to Jewish tradition, 40 is an age where a person has ample life experience and the accumulation of knowledge to be able to have a well-balanced, tempered intake of deep, powerful teachings. We don't want a person who's still subject to, the beginning building blocks of their identity and their personality. Only a person that is on solid footing would engage in the study of the Kabbalah.
Rabbi.
Yes, Lynn.
I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Is that true today that you have to be 40?
No, we're going to discuss that. No.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why not really is because the teachings of Kabbalah today, as we're going to see in the course of the evening, have been conveyed, and we've been given tools to assimilate some of those ideas in a more palatable manner. And so today there are teachings of Kabbalah that we can intake without losing our minds and without misunderstanding it. And so ironically, Kabbalah is a story of tension, of the need to convey the idea, but to be very restrictive about how and when and where it is taught. And there were special folks, Kabbalists. There was a special yeshiva in Safat in the 1500s, as we'll soon see. There was a yeshiva in Jerusalem that was special for Kabbalists. But prior to that, for thousands of years since the giving of the Torah, the Kabbalah was really a secret that was highly guarded. Now, as we've been doing all these weeks, to give us a little bit of a tour, an overview of the history of the Kabbalah, we're going to look at our wonderful video produced by the Jewish Learning Institute. And please sit back, relax, and get ready for a journey throughout time and space as we encounter many of the famous characters and texts, as well as the development of the Kabbalah, following which we're going to discuss some more, and we're even going to get a little taste of some of the Kabbalah teachings. And so get ready. Tune in. Again, those in the room, please give your attention to the screen. Those on Zoom, please look at your monitors. Those who are watching in the future, please look carefully. If there's a problem with the sound or the visuals, scream out and we'll redo it so that it's good for everyone. Otherwise, please enjoy.
The Jewish mystical tradition, the Kabbalah, formed an integral part of the Torah's transmission from its very beginnings. The earliest Kabbalistic works are attributed to Abraham, the first Jew, or even earlier to Adam, the first man. The Talmud and the Midrashim incorporate many Kabbalistic passages. These teachings, however, were the exclusive province of a small number of sages who engaged in the study of this esoteric wisdom, and even fewer who dared to disseminate it. The prophet Ezekiel's vision of the divine chariot, Merkava, recorded in the book of Ezekiel, is the biblical source for many Kabbalistic principles and ideas. A number of early Kabbalistic texts were composed in Mishnaic times, in the 1st and 2nd century of the Common Era. These texts, however, are extremely terse and mysterious, their meaning decipherable only to those who were privy to the oral tradition that accompanied them. The great Mishnaic sage Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai taught the wisdom of Kabbalah to a close circle of disciples. These discourses and discussions were recorded in the Zohar, which remains the most basic text of Kabbalah. The Zohar, however, would remain a secret text for more than 1,000 years, although snippets of it found their way into some of the Torah works composed in the interim. The first fissures in the veil of secrecy surrounding Kabbalah began to appear in the 12th century in Spain, France, Italy, and Germany, where small groups of Kabbalists and their disciples were expounding and transcribing their teachings. It was during this period that the Zohar was first published, making its hitherto hidden teachings available to those who were admitted into the secretive Kabbalistic circles. The Hasidim of Ashkenaz was a school of Jewish mystics who were active in the German Rhineland in the 12th and 13th centuries. Its leaders, Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid and Rabbi Elazar Rokeach of Worms. One of the preeminent sages of Spanish Jewry, Nachmanides, authored important works in all areas of Torah, biblical commentary, Talmudic analysis, Torah law, philosophy, and ethics. Nachmanides was also a master Kabbalist who incorporated many Kabbalistic ideas into his commentary on the Torah. Rabbi Abraham Abulafia and his disciples, active in 13th century Italy, emphasized the practice of meditative Kabbalah and the attainment of mystical union with God. Other noted Kabbalists of the medieval period include the anonymous author of the foundational Kabbalistic work Ma'arechet HaElokut and Rabbi Yosef Gikatila, Rabbi Menachem Merkanti, Rabbi Meir ibn Gabbai, and Rabbi Yehuda Chayat. Despite the surge in dissemination by the medieval Kabbalists, Kabbalah was still a secret discipline, studied and taught by an exclusive circle of mystics. The next breakthrough came in the mid-16th century, when Tzfat, a city in the north of the Holy Land, became a center of Jewish mystical learning. One of the early teachers of Kabbalah in Tzfat was Rabbi Shlomo Alkabetz, who is known as the author of the mystical poem Lecha Dodi, Come My Beloved to Meet the Bride, sung in Jewish communities on Friday evening to welcome the Shabbat. Rabbi Yosef Karo, known primarily as the author of the Shulchan Aruch Code of Jewish Law, was also an accomplished Kabbalist, who recorded his mystical visions in his Magid Mesharim. At the hub of the Tzfat mystics were two great teachers of Kabbalah, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, known as Ramak, and Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, known by the acronym Ari, the Lion. Ramak's encyclopedic Pardes Ramonim, Orchard of Pomegranates, was a first-of-its-kind, systematic explanation of the multitude of worlds, virot, and concepts that populate Kabbalistic teaching. Ari, although his sojourn in Tzfat was cut short after only 2 years when he died in a plague at the age of 38, left behind numerous disciples and a vast body of teachings. Indeed, almost all subsequent Jewish mystical learning is predicated on the Ari's teaching. Ari revolutionized the realm of Jewish mystical learning by proclaiming that the restrictions on disseminating Kabbalistic teachings applied only in earlier generations, and that in these times it is permitted and obligatory to reveal this wisdom. As a result, a number of Ari's disciples labored to record and publicize his teachings and to seed centers of Kabbalistic learning throughout the Jewish world. One of these disciples, Rabbi Israel Sarug, traveled for 20 years throughout Italy, the Balkans, Germany, Poland, Turkey, Egypt, and elsewhere to introduce the Lurianic Kabbalah. From Tzfat, the teachings of Kabbalah spread across the Jewish world. In the following generations, additional masters and schools of Kabbalistic learning developed in various Jewish communities. Maharal was a mystic and philosopher who expressed Kabbalistic ideas in philosophical terms. His teachings influenced many subsequent schools of Jewish thought. Maharal's Kabbalah appears to derive from earlier sources, as the Tzfatian Kabbalah had not yet reached Eastern Europe in his day. There is a tradition that Maharal used Kabbalistic formulae to create a golem, a humanoid, to save the Jewish community of Prague from the frequent blood libels of the time. Another influential figure in Jewish philosophy and mysticism was Rabbi Yeshayahu Horowitz, who served as a rabbi in numerous Jewish communities in both Europe and the Holy Land, including Dubna, Frankfurt, Prague, Jerusalem, Tzfat, and Tiberias. He's known as Shalah, after his magnum opus, Shnei Luchot Habrit, 2 Tablets of the Covenant, which blends Kabbalah, Talmudic discourse, Torah law and customs, biblical commentary, and ethics. Shalah's works incorporate the teachings of Ramak and Ari and their disciples. Other 16th and 17th century Kabbalists include Rabbi Yisrael Najar of Gaza, Rabbi Menachem Azaria di Fano of Italy, and Rabbi Naftali Hertz Bachrach of Germany. Prominent 18th century Kabbalists include Ramchal, a prodigious author of Kabbalah, philosophy, ethics, and poetry, and Rabbi Chaim ibn Attar. The Gra school of Kabbalah encompasses the Kabbalistic teachings of Rabbi Eliyahu, the Gaon of Vilna, and his disciples. In Jerusalem, the Bet El School of Kabbalah was a center of mystical learning for 250 years. Its leaders included Rabbi Shalom Sharabi of Yemen and Rabbi Chaim Yosef David Azulai, the Chidah. Notwithstanding all of this activity and publications, Kabbalah remained a closed book for the great majority of Jews. The teachings remained esoteric, requiring a subtle mind and extensive knowledge and training to properly understand. As a rule, the restrictions placed on the study of Kabbalah were still widely enforced. For example, a person had to be past the age of 40 and had to be thoroughly versed in the revealed portions of the Torah, such as Talmud and Halacha, before they would be permitted to approach its hidden element. The final breakthrough, which paved the way for the realization of the Ari's declaration that the time had come for the inner soul of Torah to be revealed, came with the founding of the Hasidic movement by Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov in 1734. In addition to revealing an entirely new dimension of Torah, Hasidism also popularized and made accessible the teachings of Kabbalah by explaining its ideas in ways that made them comprehensible and applicable to all.
Rabbi,
Yes,
I have a question.
go ahead.
And my question is, are all Hasidim, do they all practice Kabbalah?
No,
Okay.
no. Hasidut the word, I don't want to go too far down that. Hasidim can be a word used to describe a very large, diverse group of what we might call Orthodox observant Jews. But Hasidic teachings are very central to the, I don't want to use the word modernizing, but the conveyance of Kabbalistic ideas to the center of Jewish conscious today. And in truth, almost all Kabbalah that you'll encounter in 2023 is going to lean upon the teachings of Kabbalah to help make that palatable and understandable. So let me back up for just a moment, because you're asking a wonderful question that I was hoping you would ask. Because as was teased at the end of the class, there were many there were many phases in the development of Kabbalah. And in the final phase of Kabbalah, we have the teachings of the Hasidic movement, founded by someone who you probably heard his name, Rabbi Yisroel Baal Shem Tov, in around 1730. And although the movement introduced many important contributions, such as the value of joy, the acceptance and value of every Jew, regardless of their education or background, serving God and approaching Judaism with joy, making Judaism more accessible. But one of the main ideas was they took the abstract, coded language of Kabbalah, and Hasidus aims to make it something that is much more accessible. And so one might ask, why today is there no restriction to only learn Kabbalah at the age of 40 or when a person is highly oriented? And one of the answers might be because Hasidism translates Kabbalah into a language that is a whole lot more comprehensible for everyone. Mm-hmm. And Kabbalah uses a language that's very obscure. And I'm going to show you one excerpt in a moment, and you're going to appreciate what I'm saying. And so you might have someone who reads the texts of the Kabbalah, but if you don't know what those codes, those references mean, and if you don't know what is an analogy and what is to be taken literally, you'll know a whole lot of, you could repeat back a lot of ideas, but not grasp what's being conveyed. And so Hasidism attempts to give tools to digest, to appreciate, and to translate obscure, abstract, Kabbalistic ideas and make it a whole lot more relatable. So you might ask, what is the justification to suddenly use a whole bunch of tools to make these ideas a whole lot more relatable? So on a superficial level, we might say that Judaism and the Torah as a whole is constantly undergoing a journey of becoming repackaged and more presentable, and throughout the ages. We might say, as in a sense, we are more removed from Sinai and from Moses, we need more and more tools to be able to internalize and to appreciate the Torah teachings. And therefore, there's a constant development, and new resources are being developed to make Torah accessible. And I'll just give you an interesting example. The internet has made Torah teachings so much more accessible, because think about it. You could sit in the comfort of your home or watch a recording in the future and be exploring the depths of Torah Jewish knowledge. Additionally, the resources, the visual aid, illustrations that have become available truly have moved our ability to explore and to appreciate the Torah light years forward. Similarly, when it comes to the Kabbalistic teachings, as time moves on, it becomes more and more important. There is a famous question, there's a famous story. Baal Shem Tov founds the Hasidic movement. He makes an effort to bring the godly, mystical teachings of Kabbalah and make it accessible. Where did that come from? So there's a very, very fascinating letter. He writes a letter to his brother-in-law. He says something to this effect. Well, actually, no, we can take a look at it. Please turn to page 247, 248, text 4. And we're going to see an excerpt of a letter that the Baal Shem Tov wrote, I believe, to his brother-in-law, Rabbi Israel Baal Shem Tov, 1698, 1760. And again, this is page 245. And this is a shocking story. On Rosh Hashanah, 1746, my soul ascended to the higher worlds, which I believe he's describing a kind of mystical trance-like state. I rose level after level, and he's traveling in a spiritual journey until I reached the chamber of Mashiach. I asked Mashiach, when will you come? And he said, by this you will know. When your teachings, the Kabbalistic teachings, become revealed throughout the world, and your well springs will be spread to the outside. And so the Baal Shem Tov has this spiritual moment where he has a outer body, outer worldly kind of communication. And he is informed that it is time to spread these important deep teachings of the Kabbalah, of the hidden secrets of Torah. And if you want to take a look, and this becomes the mission of the Baal Shem Tov and the many disciples who follow him, to make these deep esoteric teachings accessible to as many people as possible. And if you'll turn to page 246 just for a moment.
Rabbi?
Yes, Lynn.
I'm sorry. What does the word Mashiach mean?
Okay, so Mashiach, or the Messiah, is
that's the Messiah?
What we're describing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know I can't tell you exactly. Again, this is an instance of a text that it's hard to know exactly what it means. But what I can tell you is that he understood that he had a mandate to convey the teachings, the mystical teachings and the esoteric teachings, and make them accessible to everyone, anyone that would study. Now, what is the connection between these deep secrets and Mashiach? Very simple. The Jewish idea is that we must make our world more compatible and friendly with God, with godly values and godly virtues. And the best way, or one of the tools and the ways to understand what it means to have a relationship with God and how God might interact with our universe, is to study the secrets of creation, the secrets of Jewish mysticism, and have a sense of heightened Jewish spirituality that is made available through those teachings. More so, as our world develops, technology develops, we have greater ability to convey ideas, but we also have a much darker world. Evil, bad things can spread. Cyberbullying. And if you read the headlines about people that use the internet to scam, to steal, to drive people to harm themselves, there's a lot of power, there's a lot of good, there's a lot of evil. And so in order to fight back, to change the tide, we need to introduce even more resources. And those mystical secret teachings of the Kabbalah can be very important. Additionally, the coming of Mashiach represents the ultimate realization of what Judaism aims to accomplish. Total Jewish literacy and spiritual connection. And so in a sense, we might say that Hasidus is the inner soul. It's the deep secrets and provides meaning to all the other genres of Torah. And so when we hear, but what was the problem? The problem is like this. The Kabbalah talks about God. So what's wrong about that? Well, God is beyond human comprehension. God does not take any human form and cannot be forced into any box. And Lynn, this might be familiar to anyone that joined us for our last course. We cannot force God into any box that humans relate to and is part of the human experience. Now, the Kabbalah uses human language to describe godly abstract things that may otherwise be inaccessible. And so, if we don't have the right background, the right orientation, the right teacher, we could read a text that's describing God in an abstract way and take it literally and have the very wrong idea. Mm-hmm. So what I want to do now is I want to share with you a video about the 10 Sfirot, because one of the central Kabbalistic teachings is the idea of God creating the universe. And when God creates the universe, he uses 10 mystical energies or emotional attributes to use in creation. And after this, we're going to find out that the human body has a mirror image of the 10 divine powers or energies that God uses to create the world. And then when we're done with that, we're going to talk a little bit about what it means that God has characteristics that could even be described or ascribed to human beings. And we're going to use a Kabbalistic framework to understand it. And then we're going to use a Hasidic framework to really appreciate what's going on. So again, we're going to talk about 10 godly powers that he uses to create the universe. And there are also parallels in our existence. and then we'll use a Kabbalistic framework to understand it, and then we'll use a Hasidic added resource to understand what we're talking about. So please sit back, relax, and again, enjoy this additional brief video. I hope you'll find it informative, and it'll be the launch for our discussion of and study of the Kabbalah. Hopefully it'll share and the sound will share too. If you have any problems, you'll let me know.
In the beginning, God decided to do the impossible, to create a finite, diverse universe within his infinite, indivisible self. God first created the mystical Sephirot, 10 divine channels through which his infinite light could be condensed, contracted, and then released as individualized attributes that could eventually give rise to a diversity of finite creations.
Just going to pause right here. What we just read, does that not already sound overwhelming? God, once in God's infiniteness, he creates a space to, I'm going to back up just so we can listen to that one more time. Description, these are Kabbalistic texts being produced in a modern, how do you call it? For modern production. But I want you to listen carefully again. I'm sorry, I'm going back just so we can really listen.
Within his infinite, indivisible self, God first created the mystical Sephirot, 10 divine channels through which his infinite light could be condensed.
10 channels to condense God's infinite energy and infinite light.
Contracted and then released as individualized attributes that could eventually give rise to a diversity of finite creations. Let us make man in our own image, said God. No sooner said than done. Man was created in his Creator's image, with his own internal set of 10 attributes through which he operates. These 10 spiritual attributes are reflected in the physical human anatomy. Let's go through them, one by one. Sephira 1, Chachma. Chachma is the initial seed of an idea, the flash of undeveloped inspiration. It enables us to be creative, spiritual, transcendent. Sephira 2, Bina. Bina is the development of ideas. It enables us to be logical, analytical, organized. Sephira 3, Dot. Dot allows us to focus on an idea so that it becomes relevant and personally meaningful. It enables us to be attentive, principled, involved. Sephira 4, Chesed. Chesed is the power to love, share, and look kindly upon others. It enables us to be generous, optimistic, sociable. Sephira 5, Gevura. Gevura is the power of discipline and restraint. It enables us to be calculated, cautious, serious. Sephira 6, Tiferet. Tiferet is the power to empathize and to harmonize kindness with strictness based on the needs of others. It enables us to be balanced, empathetic, harmonious. Sephira 7, Netzach. Netzach is the power of determination to overcome challenge. It enables us to be persistent, forceful, daring. Sephira 8, Hod. Hod is the power of humility, gratitude, and submitting to a higher cause. It enables us to be thankful, devoted, accommodating. Sephira 9, Yesod. Yesod is the power to focus on others and to build genuine relationships. It enables us to be selfless, altruistic, loyal. And last, but not at all least, Sephira 10, Malchut. Malchut has multiple functions. It is the power of speech and action, effective communication and leadership, and to be receptive to others. It enables us to be leading, communicating, achieving. So there you have it, the 10 components of the human self, the internal mechanism upon which all intellect, emotion, and actions run. God used 10 Sephirot to create his universe, and we use our 10 Sephirot to shape our miniature universes.
Wow.
So I hope you appreciate that. That was a very intense but well-produced video describing 10 soul powers that we have to interact with one another and with our universe. And metaphorically, God uses the same. So let's just think about that for a moment. The Kabbalah says that just like we have kindness in our heart to give to others, God has a sense of kindness. The same way that we have severity, God has a certain side of him that is severe, strict, and disciplining, and so on with all the other descriptions. Now, if you'll turn with me to text 6, page 250, and take a look real briefly to a similar but much more brief expression. And then we'll understand why studying God's relationship with creation can be dangerous. God fills the world like the soul fills the body. All of us, we have a body, but we feel that we are alive and we have an energy, and there's this animating force that's our character, our personality, our soul, our energy, which is not our body. And we are saying that God animates the universe, which is a powerful teaching and an important teaching. And it reminds us that there is a spiritual energy within a material world. But could you see how this text and the other texts that we read describing God as having characteristics might cause us to have a misconstrued and physical material impression of God? We envision ourselves and our body, and we might think of God the same way. And that could be dangerous. And so once upon a time, these teachings were meant to be given over in secret. None of us would know about the Sefirot, only from teacher to student, lest we come to make the mistake and not realize the oneness of God, that there is only one true existence God who is not divisible, describable, or definable. And so to avoid making that mistake, the Kabbalah teachings were a secret for a very long time. But there's a problem, because while God cannot be defined, we know he's involved in creation, and God chooses to allow himself to be expressed through the world that he creates, even though he is not constrained by it. So we have these two conflicting ideas. We have God being infinite and indivisible, and we have God choosing to interact, or in the language of the video, constrict his infinite energy into 10 channels. And so what's going on over here? So the Kabbalists describe the 10 Sephirah model. And furthermore, we talk about God creating a human being in his image. There's something that makes us like a God-like. And so the answer is, hold on, just here, you want to take a look. This is the map, if you want to call it, of the 10 Sephirot. And you could bookmark that if you'd like. It's on page 255. And you see it's divided by intellectual components and the emotional components. So what does it mean? So there's a very important Kabbalistic analogy, and it's on page 257, text 15. If you'll join me on for text 15, 257. How do we understand that God is being described as having Sephirot, personality, description, specific energy? And I love this analogy, but it's also abstract. It says every creation is rooted in one of the 10 Sephirot, but basically everything that exists on this planet, before we go to the explanation, everything on this planet is one-dimensional. Food, rocks, even animals who we love and have so much emotion generally are best representative or embodied by a single kind of characteristic. Some things in creation might be kind, others forceful, and certainly other aspects of creation. A human being is godlike in that we have this complexity. We contain within ourselves all different emotions, all different channels and ways of thinking. And in that sense, we are created in God's image. But let's understand how God could be defined at all. And so again, text 15, 258, 259.
Rabbi,
Yes.
you talk about the 10, but on page 255, I was fascinated by this. I've heard it before, but there's 11, not 10.
So allow me not to get too into the, it's a good question. Allow me to get not too into the weeds right now. We can address it at the end, but let's first read this if you don't mind. But it's a good
Okay,
question.
no problem.
And
I
very
just wanted-
good that you picked that up. In regards, here, this is from a work called Hardest Rimonim from Rabbi Moshe Cordovero. If you remember in the video, he is one of the very important characters or scholars of the Kabbalistic tradition. His claim to fame is that he was the teacher of Rabbi Isaac Luria, the founder of Lurianic Kabbalah. So almost all Kabbalah we have today stems from this scholar in his work Pardes Yermonim. In truth, in regards to our Creator, the infinite Creator of all, we cannot speak, nor describe, nor require judgment, compassion, anger, wrath, neither variation nor limitation, nor any properties whatsoever. It would be inappropriate to ascribe to God any characteristic, not before the creation or after the creation. What we should know, however, is that at the very beginning, God created 10 sefirot. We could provide an analogy to help us better understand it. I'm paraphrasing. Page 259. The analogy is of water that is distributed among various vessels. The vessels are different colors. One is white, another red, green, and so on. Now, when the water is channeled in those vessels, the water remains colorless, but it appears to have the color of the respective vessels. Appears to have changed its color. In truth, however, the water does not acquire any new color. The vessels merely impose their colors. The imposition is only in relation to how it appears to us, but not the water's core makeup. So it is with sefirot. We describe these 10 powers that God uses to create. The vessels in the analogy are divine attributes we call loving kindness, power, beauty, and so on. Each is colored for its function. But the light of the emanator, God, which flows through them, transcends all variation in function. The variation in their effect is only due to the difference in function in their vessel. So this is a very deep, abstract, Kabbalistic teaching saying as follows. We are made in the image of God. But how does God have an image at all? And the answer is our perspective. It seems like God takes on certain characteristics because we experience God with kindness, severity, wrath, and so forth. But to impose those descriptions to God would be like saying that the water that's in the green bottle is green and the water in the red bottle is red. It looks like it's colored, but that's only because of the tinting of the glass itself. Or maybe we'd use a different analogy. We'd say the sunlight that filters through a colored glass, it takes on the color as we experience it, but the sun is not colored. And so this is a Kabbalistic teaching about how we could describe God with sefirot, even though God does not take on any of their form. But this is hard for us to appreciate as a matter of fact. And so I want to introduce to you a Hasidic teaching, same question, same idea, but an answer that I think we can all relate to a whole lot better. And we're going to wind down with that teaching, page 260 and 261. This is a teaching of Rabbi Dov Ber. 260, 261. All the worlds cannot comprehend God's greatness and power. God therefore performs many contractions to enable the world to relate with him. Short summary, God is totally not relatable to the universe. He does not take on any of the forms, characteristics, or notions that we conceive that would be necessary for creation. And yet God forces himself to do something ungodly to create and to manifest with certain personalities. How do we understand this? This is like a father or a parent who sees a child playing a game. Out of his love for his child, the father plays with the child. Although for the father, this is childish and petty activity. You ever played peekaboo with a kid or a grandkid?
Yeah.
Or a niece or nephew?
Yeah.
Peekaboo is the silliest, most nonsensical game ever. But you engage in it because you want to connect to your child, grandchild, niece, nephew, or so forth. Although for the father or mother, it's childish and petty, out of love for the child, in order to derive pleasure from the child, a father or mother contracts their adult mind. They temporarily suspend acting like a normal adult. If I would get up in shul and say peekaboo, someone would call 911 and try to have me right, institutionalized. So why is that not considered crazy when I do that with my daughter or son? And the answer is because we suspend our adult operating system to relate to the child mentality. On the other end, if the father would conduct himself in accordance with his own mentality, the child would not be able to relate to the father. Imagine if I wanted to play with Nechama, who's 3, and I'd start telling her about the Talmud or about the Kabbalah. She would think I'm crazy. The father or mother would not derive any pleasure from that experience. And so, similarly, says Rabbi Dover, this is a way to understand that God really is not of this world. God is not really constrained in any of the forms, any of the manners that the Kabbalists describe that God engages in creation. But this is what God does for the world because he desires to have the world. The language of the Kabbalists, Tzimtzum, contractions. God isolates a 10-dimensional personality from within his infinite being. So God has an adult operating system and the way he interacts with a lower being, a child, humanity. And so just like we don't become the peekaboo person just because we're relating to the kid, but we channel ourselves into a different way of expression, well, God does the same. He creates a persona that will allow us in our world, from our frame of reference, to appreciate him. He contracts himself within this divine image. And this is one of the great secrets of the Kabbalists and of human existence, that God is totally beyond our world, and yet he chooses to care, chooses to engage, and chooses to relate to us. Hasidic teaching, though, takes this whole idea one step further. Because, we're talking about the God of our world, the God on his own, the energy that's beyond us and within us. And Hasidic teachings takes it to a beautiful teaching. In our life, we have 2 options. Are we going to pursue material stuff, pleasure, and ignore any voice the soul has for spirituality? Or might we want to lead a life that's entirely detached from the bodies and the world's physical pleasure and the good things the world has to offer? But in truth, what's expected of us is to balance the 2. God teaches us that he's willing to come down, so to speak, to engage in the universe. And similarly, we have moments where we feel apart, abstract, inspired, but then we have times that we need to re-engage in our universe, reflecting God's behavior of going between 2 universes. And we need to do this the same, because we have the ability to bring godliness into our entire state of existence. We saw this, but I want to end with this teaching that we saw at the beginning of our course. Here is a donkey laden with burdens. These look like propane tanks or something like that. Well, you might recall we read a verse in the Bible that says, when you see the donkey of your enemy collapsing under its burden, you are inclined to stop, to hold back from assisting him. You must assist him. Here's an interesting Hasidic interpretation. The Hebrew word for donkey is the same as the word for material. And here is the Hasidic teaching. A person sees themselves, their existence, as material. And you might think, oh, this is ungodly. This is not part of my ideal version of myself. You might see that your body is a burden or an enemy. And you might want to break your body. No, that's wrong. Don't fight against yourself. Pardon me. What should you do? Elevate your body, refine your body, and bring it into the picture. The idea of Kabbalah and Hasidic teaching is to make deep, abstract, spiritual ideas relatable so we can incorporate it into our life. And our point of existence is all about integration, bringing the abstract, lofty values of the Torah into tea time, into an outing, into mahjong, into a trip to the pool. Torah is all about integration of abstract, deep, godly ideas and bringing it into our universe. That's really the objective of the Torah, to be a guide for extremely human, normal people to also remain connected with their godly heritage. And every one of us, every human being has a soul which makes us compatible with divinity. And the challenge is to navigate and to bridge those two worlds. It's the objective of the Torah overall, but particularly that is the objective of the teachings of Kabbalah and Hassidut, to find inspiration, to realize God's greatness, and to appreciate the gift that God gives us to be able to be his partner, to straddle two worlds, the divine and the material, neither being our enemy, both being our friend. Because when we engage our spiritual heritage, we engage the world around us, we become partners with God. God contracts himself to bring spiritual energy into our universe, and we can become God's assistant to further bring that spiritual energy wherever we go. And that is the gift of the Torah, which calls out to each of us to be a light unto the nations. What does that mean? Does that mean perks? No. It means that we have to, if we should choose to heed the calling of the Torah, to try to live a life of higher values and convey them forth to our family, to our friends, to our environment. This is the gift of the Torah, and this is the ultimate purpose of Booksmart, that we should become educated, but not only educated, but engaged citizens of this world. My dear friends, this course, 6 weeks, was certainly not exhaustive. This is not the end of a journey of the exploration of the Torah. This is intended to be the next step in a journey of exploration, study. And so really fast, just to recap, 6 weeks, 6 lessons. Week number 1, we explored the idea of the written Torah, Tanakh, which has 3 sections: Torah, the 5 books of Moses; Nevi'im, the prophets; and Ketubim, the scriptures, including the scrolls, the book of Esther, Lamentations, and so forth. We talked about the Midrash, the work of the Midrash, as well as the general technique of the Torah text conveying important and diverse ideas. Week number 3, the Mishnah and the Talmud, the oral traditions that were once oral and then finally transcribed and used to organize and develop and present and preserve all of the different Jewish practices and traditions. Week number 4, the way those ideas that are distributed across the Talmud are organized into halachic guide books, which led us to last week, Jewish philosophy, theology, and self-improvement. And last but not least, the teaching that brings it all together, the teachings of Kabbalah and Hassidut, the esoteric, once hidden teachings that today are essential to help us be inspired and to allow us to realize that we are empowered to take the mission that God began when he created the universe, to constrict God's energy, but ultimately to spread it forth through the universe. And we can do the same when we realize that our spiritual heritage, our spiritual identity, and our material bodily identity are not two different contradicting ideas, but two sides of the same coin. Our mission to take the Torah's values and bring them forth into the world. And that, my dear friends, concludes our 6-week teaser, Booksmart, on many of the different genres of Jewish knowledge and scholarship. My dear friends who are in the room, my dear friends who are on Zoom, my dear friends who will be watching this in the future, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for holding on tight. It was a wild ride. We covered many ideas. We traveled back and forth through time and space, and yet you held on. And now our ride has come to a complete stop. You can unbuckle your seatbelts and take these ideas, take these teachings, and bring them into the world.
Very good. So much. Hard to absorb it all, but you get the gist of it and you can really think about it. So many things to think about. can work on within ourselves. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. I'm
Thank you
grateful.
so much.
I'm grateful you're on for the ride again. Just a tease.
It
Thank you,
was
Rabbi.
something.
We
Did
loved
such a
it.
good
We enjoyed
job.
it.
I loved it too.
It was
Thank
very
you. Thank you. Thank you. Cohen's, how is everyone feeling?
Good.
okay. We're
Good.
doing
Enjoying it
good.
very much.
I have a question.
Go ahead, please.
Are women permitted to read the Kabbalah?
Yes.
Do
I
they
taught
have?
you Kabbalah. I taught Kabbalah to a group that I think we have more women than men.
Mhm.
Again, even on the Kabbalistic conversation, this is just the beginning. By the way, there's some wonderful additional readings and texts that I omitted in order to present what I thought would be a palatable presentation. You're more than welcome to peruse your book. There's many more interesting, fascinating, and important readings. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. I think this is a wonderful book. My background is blurry. Hang on one second. It's a fantastic book. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll keep it. And if you didn't get one, Sheila, did I get you your book?
I have the
I
book
did.
and I'm going to start over with it. I'll probably have to read it 3 times,
Sure.
maybe 4 times. But then I get the gist of it.
Also, all these discussions are recorded, so you're on YouTube. So if you want, message me privately. If you don't have the link, I'll send it to you, and you can go through. The nice thing about YouTube is you don't have to listen to the whole thing over. You can skip through and choose whatever you're looking for. And so I really, really want to